Okay, welcome everyone. We are back with super scientist Giovanni Cassini, a man of the stars. As you can see, the beautiful stars up there. Who was Giovanni Cassini? Well, as you may have heard about him, Cassini might be a familiar name to some of you. Last name Italian. He was an astronomer. He was born on Earth in a country called Italy, as you may have heard of. I like to jot down here, he was baby Cassini, born in 1625, all the way back then, a long time ago. There he is, the little baby smiling face, Mr. Cassini. In all his pictures, he also had an epic, fill in the blank here, he had an epic wig. Ginormous wig back in the day, back in ye old 17th century wigs. Pretty epic, pretty amazing wig that he donned. For fun here, I wrote his dad's name. His dad's name is hilarious. It's Jacopo Cassini. You gotta love those Italians. So his daddy, Jacopo. I just had to include that for fun. Moving on into, as we develop in his career here, in 1650 he becomes a professor of astronomy at the University of, you might be able to guess it, that's right, the University of Bologna. Totally real. Actually, it's I think it's like Bologna or Bologna. I don't know, but I like the University of Bologna. But as you can see here, Mr. Cassini became an astronomy professor, very knowledgeable with the stars, and his career continued on throughout the 1650s, 60s, and 70s, until eventually he gets in good graces with King Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King. So this guy, fancy garb, fancy dress, Mr. King, he hears about this Cassini, this brilliant Cassini guy, making all these different stellar observations, and he grants him some money to go to Paris. And it's over at Paris that Cassini's career really takes off, and he makes some stellar observations. Okay, so what were these stellar observations that Cassini was making? Remember, before the Sun King gives him this observatory over in Paris, Cassini was making some gravity waves of his discoveries. One of his first discoveries that he made was the rotation, or he studied and observed the orbit and rotation of Jupiter and Mars. And remember, before we dive into that, he was using telescopes. This is in the 1650s, 60s, and 70s that Cassini was doing all this amazing work in observational astronomy. And right now, all the star charts, all his publications. But he had the benefit of using a telescope. Our eyeballs are great sensing devices for us humans. And so the telescope allows us to collect all this light, actually see all this stuff for ourselves, rather than just speculate. Rather than just using our big brains, we can use our big eyeballs too. So it helped a lot. So he actually observed Jupiter and Mars, the rotation, before moving to the Paris Observatory. But he found out very accurately about the rotation, the length of time it takes Jupiter and Mars to rotate once on its axis. Which in the case of Jupiter is like freaking super crazy fast. It's about 10 hours for Jupiter, which is just crazy. And Mars is actually a nice, comfortable, it's close to 25 hours of a day. So it's almost identical day to Earth here. So that's very lovely. So in the future, when we move to Mars, we know we have about the same day length. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so Cassini found this out. And then when he goes and says arrivederci to Italy.
Difficile di trovare. Arrivederci. Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
And he becomes a French guy now. He wants to start crunching the breadsticks and the numbers. So there you go. But he says arrivederci to Italy. He moves on to his Paris Observatory, and this is where he makes his big boy, legendary Cassini discoveries. His biggest discoveries by far were that he discovered 4 big moons of Saturn, which include Rhea, Dione, Iapetus, and Tethys. All really cool names. All kind of boring ice balls in space, but that's okay. We still love them. We still study them. I've talked a little bit about Rhea and Dione. I'll dive into Iapetus and Tethys coming up. But they're beautiful ice balls in space. They're quite large, just kind of medium-sized, maybe more like medium-sized moons, not very large. Rhea and Dione, I believe, are a little bit larger. I'm not sure about Iapetus and Tethys. Kind of medium-sized moons. You know, they're respectable. They're not giant, but they're there, and they are big moons of Saturn, which has 83 known moons currently. Crazy. So Cassini makes this huge discovery in the year. So he discovered these moons all around the same time, but it was from the 1670s to the 80s. I believe it was 1684. That's 1684. And so you can see like the length of time he really dedicated himself for. Cassini had a long, fruitful life, and so he dedicated a ton of time to just observing the stars, and specifically Saturn. He spent decades doing this, so you can see over the span of a decade plus, about maybe 14 years, he finds all these beautiful moons of Saturn. So pretty cool. He also is known for confirming our boy Huygens, who we'll talk about. He sees that Saturn's rings have many divisions in them. So again, our telescope here, Cassini is really looking through that telescope, and he sees, oh, there's actually divisions. The rings of Saturn actually have, so if we look at Saturn here, look at the rings. Actually, let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys here. So if you go like this, you can see in the rings of Saturn, there's actually many divisions in them. So the ring looks quite large from a distance, but you can actually, many beautiful images of various satellites and imagery that we've gathered, mostly with the Cassini-Huygens probe, named after him, of course. But there's many lines in the ring system, and there's little tiny divisions. So all those little rocks and ice, those fragments that form the rings, Cassini confirmed that there are many divisions within the rings of Saturn. Because of his amazing telescopic observations, he was able to confirm that. And those rings look more like a raceway around Saturn, but that's okay. It looks beautiful nonetheless. So yeah, Huygens here, Christian Huygens is really the one that discovered the first rings. He had the ring hypothesis in the late, I believe, like 1659. He published a work on that, but Cassini comes in and confirms that. Says, yeah, he's right, and there's little gaps in there, and so that's crazy. And so yeah, pretty cool. And today, actually, the largest gap in the rings of Saturn, the system, they've named, a lot of the scientists have named the gaps in the ring systems and the rings themselves, I believe. The largest gap, the largest gap in the ring system is named Cassini. The Cassini division, as it's called. So how about that? So I'm sure Cassini would be very proud that hundreds of years later, astronomers named not the rings after him, but the largest gap in the rings. How about that? That's something. So he's not the ring itself, he's the nothingness within the ring. So I don't know. There you go. There's our boy Cassini. So divisions in Saturn's rings. And finally, another great discovery that our boy Cassini found out was he used this thing called parallax in astronomy. I don't know if he's the first one to have done this, but at this time, with telescopic observations becoming a big thing in the 1600s here, in the 17th century, for astronomy really propelling the science forward, all this beautiful crystal science. We have parallax. So what is parallax? Well, parallax is a weird phenomenon. If you hold up, as an example, if you hold your thumb up, or let's say I hold this marker up, and if I open my right eye, if I then close my right eye and open my left eye, so I'm only looking with one eye, the marker, and I go back and forth with my eyeballs, the marker appears to shift, and it appears to move, even though it has not moved at all, actually. And so a similar phenomenon happens with the Earth, because as we're going around the sun, as us Earthlings are spiraling around the sun, when, let's say, Earth's over here and Earth's over here, here's the sun right here in the middle, shining away, as it does. So when Earth is here, if we look at, let's say we're looking at an object out in space, then when we look at it from here, when we look at it again from here, its position in the night sky is going to shift, when in fact it's only because we've moved. Our planet has moved. Just like our eyes are, one's on the right, one's on the left. There's a shift happening that no such division really need take place. And so, but by measuring this, astronomers can use this and measure kind of the gap in there, almost like use trigonometry, other fancy mathematics, and you can discover the distances a little more accurately. That's a really cool, fancy way that astronomers and scientists use to this day. Parallax is very common. I believe he's also like a Marvel villain or something. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, parallax is pretty cool, but we now know 93 million miles away is the distance between the sun and the earth. And Cassini was quite accurate in his measurements. And so Cassini kind of did another cool mathematical thing, a little trickeration of mathematics to kind of nail our position in the solar system, to nail that down and to let us know how distant the sun is. Pretty amazing. But again, his biggest discoveries would have to be with Saturn. So when you hear Cassini, think Saturn. When you hear Cassini, think Saturn's moons, think the rings and the divisions in the rings, think big giant wigs, think crunchy breadsticks, think Italian crazy accents and French skies and cheese and stuff. Pretty cool. Think about his dad, Jacopo, just crazy Italian names. So that's our boy Cassini, another super scientist, amazing astronomer. I hope you guys liked the lesson today. Please like, comment, hit that sub sandwich button. Thank you for joining me on today's lesson. Peace out.